I'm Dan.
And I'm Alex.
And welcome back to On Air. What a week it's been again. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm good. There's some unusual. I know we've been in touch about this throughout in between episodes because there is some unusual weather in the region, specifically across the Gulf. And while rain is perfectly normal elsewhere, when it rains here, it's something of a novelty, but also things start acting up. You suddenly can't get to places because you very quickly realize these are cities in the desert.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was at the Dubai Mall. I don't remember when it rained in Dubai, but it was someday, I think last week. And
Thursday.
Yeah. It's so funny because we were texting each other videos and I was like, oh my God, because we happened to be in the Dubai Mall with a friend walking out. And the second we walk out, the Burj Khalifa is hit by lightning. And 30 seconds later, the sky is just open. Everyone is like elated, so excited, which, I think about all the European tourists who are there to lie on the beach. I know they're just also frustrated. Actually, I'm sure you didn't see this, but I saw the most fascinating new type of insurance was introduced by, TUI, the charter company. So,
of course, the tour operator.
Yeah. So TUI Scandinavia specifically partnered with a new type of insurance where you sign up, it depends on the cost of your trip, and then you get cover for every day that it rains on your trip. So if it rains every single day, you get 100% of your trip refunded by this insurance, which I think is pretty genius.
Yeah, definitely. And, there's a misconception as well that in so many places around the world, think of the beautiful beaches of the Maldives and so on, that it's just this picture perfect weather every single day. But of course, there are entire seasons where that does not happen.
Yeah.
And it always amazes me when you hear that people haven't checked. It's like those that don't check when they're going to Disneyland or something and they're going whenever hurricane season is, in kind of like the middle of summer onwards, and they're just shocked that they're caught up in, Florida is bracing for a new, blah, blah, blah. So
totally. It's one thing if you're from a place that doesn't really have seasons, then I understand, okay, you're not as prone to search. But if you're from most of Europe, the first thing you need to look up is the weather because you know how big a difference the weather makes and how seasonal it is.
Well, I understand you wanted to start with some news that you have that you haven't yet briefed me on, but you didn't sound happy.
I bet you're rolling your eyes that Gothenburg makes a return today, but
I knew it had to be related to Gothenburg for you not to want to tell me.
It's no longer positive news. I don't know if we had positive news ever about Gothenburg on this podcast, but now my disappointment, my childhood trauma returns because SAS has announced, and the thing that pisses me off about this is that I met the CEO of SAS in April this year at the inaugural flight from Gothenburg to New York. And he told me we are really committed to Gothenburg. We're guaranteeing at least 2 summers with this route. We really want to give it a chance. Then, guess what? Last night, on the night that the route ends for the season, SAS announced that both the route from New York to Gothenburg and the route from New York to Aalborg, which is a much, much smaller city in Denmark, will not be returning next year or potentially ever, depending on what happens. So I was just like, this is my childhood disappointments all coming back. And I mean, I'm not surprised, but it's sad news. It's always sad news when a city that isn't very well connected gets a really valuable route and then loses it again,
Did it only start this summer?
In April, yeah. So it was a summer seasonal 3 times a week with an A321, and it still didn't make it.
Oh, Dan. I mean, I don't, it's, okay, I'm gutted for you because I know you lobbied as hard as you could have for the sake of the people of Gothenburg to give them Nonstop Dan, nonstop flights to your other home, Newark, in the US. But aviation is a vicious game and it is survival of the fittest. Genuinely, it's a bit rubbish when airlines are pulling routes that you're passionate about or that you rely upon or that, I mean, the aircraft that they were using was the A321neo or A321LR.
Yeah, A321 LR, which was literally made
okay.
for routes like this.
Which was my point, which is that, I for years sat through Airbus presentations in Toulouse where the exact models they were showing that this aircraft is perfect for the slim, thin routes, aka those with not mass demand but with bespoke demand, and it's specifically for connecting those smaller cities, secondary cities like Gothenburg, to places that are hubs like New York. So it's all a bit rubbish when actually on paper it looks great. There's the perfect aircraft for it. You've got the perfect target market. You've got Nonstop Dan, who's probably going to, without even realizing, promote the route to the end of the earth and back because he's connecting his two homes. I mean, I'm a little bit, and I used to be a bit like that, to do with trying to get airlines to come to Malaga in the south of Spain. Because
you shouldn't complain. You have like almost every Middle Eastern airline flying there, at least in the summer. But of course, the winter is another thing.
I mean, there was a time, 2017, 2018, I used to sit there and say, I spend my life in transit. I'm forever in Madrid. I'm forever. I had gone from Malaga, because at the time I was fully based there. I had gone from Malaga to Toulouse, Airbus, via every way possible, you name it, I had done it, whether it was Brussels or Frankfurt or Paris or Madrid or Barcelona or Portugal or Rome or anywhere, and every single time it just took the whole day. Like there was no way around it.
But this is like such a privilege that people don't realize who live in a big, well-connected city. That, like, what's crazy is that next summer I'm going. Okay, I don't want to say what I'm doing there. I'm going to Edinburgh, and I was checking flights to go to Scandinavia from Edinburgh after that. Nowadays, I prefer to avoid flying low-cost airlines just because I have a massive carry-on like bag that I know they won't allow. But there's literally no options, even from Edinburgh, which is, I think, the biggest, most populous city in Scotland. If you don't want to connect to get to Scandinavia, there's SAS to Stockholm on some days, not great timings. But even in a city that I think of as very relevant, there's direct flights to the Middle East, to the US. They don't even have flights to most non-hubs in Europe because there's no airlines based there. So there's so many places that suffer from a lack of connectivity. And I want to ask you, do you feel like the A321LR is actually living up to its promise in terms of unlocking routes that weren't previously served?
The quick answer to that is no. But before we do go on to that, it's interesting that you don't want to talk about why you're going to Edinburgh, because of course you don't want the listeners to know that in Edinburgh you're taking a small connection to the Trump Turnberry Hotel, the Scottish Mar-a-Lago resort that he has, that you've been invited to by the former president himself, and you don't want to be exposed as this big, you open and you're a red Republican, which is totally fine because, each to their own and so on and so on. So it's funny that you just gloss over the fact that you'll be spending the summer with the Trump family.
This is fake news if I ever heard.
Who do you sound like? I mean, if ever we needed confirmation. There it is. The 321neo, incredibly versatile, as I said, for those secondary things. I don't think airlines are deploying it as they should be.
No.
I mean, there are some airlines that are. Aer Lingus do it quite well, transatlantic. Who else? TAP, Air Portugal, they're doing it transatlantic. That's what it was for. But am I seeing a rise of secondary cities being connected to big hubs and having mid-haul and long-haul services because of these efficient, and they are incredibly efficient, A321neo family aircraft? No. Airlines just are not being very, very brave. I mean, by this logic, we should have direct non-stop flights from smaller, let's look at Spain, okay? Things shouldn't be going through Madrid with these aircraft. You should be able to connect non-stop demand to places like Bilbao in the north, to places like Malaga in the
certainly
south.
Malaga and Mallorca.
Yeah. It could even go as far as working for Granada, for example, as a big Andalusia gateway for the whole Al-Andalus tourism thing, and the same in France. You should have direct nonstop to Bordeaux. You should have more direct nonstop to Toulouse and Nice and so on and so on. It's just not there.
Yeah, and that's what's so sad to see an airline like SAS actually try what this aircraft was intended for and not just do what they've been doing before, is flying from their big hub, Copenhagen, to Boston, which is a huge city, Toronto, which is a huge city. Both of these, well, not so much Boston, but Toronto is a massive Air Canada and Star Alliance hub, the alliance they are in at the moment and have been in. Then you have airlines like JetBlue, which are using it to expand their long haul operations, but they're flying the most generic routes like New York to London, New York to Amsterdam, New York to Paris, which are served by so many other airlines. So there's not really any value add. And then you look at SAS and they tried and they failed. Of course, I don't believe they gave it the chance they should give. We know that launching a new route requires a huge variety of components to make it successful. Launching it is just one piece, but then there's the marketing. And it reminds me when Qatar Airways launched flights to Gothenburg, which also sadly disappeared with the pandemic. Then they literally had buses, the regular Gothenburg buses. I've never seen this in my life with any other ad. They were painted burgundy. They had Qatar Airways plastered over them. There were billboards. Gothenburg doesn't even have billboards, and somehow Qatar Airways had billboards in the city. I've never seen marketing like that. And that's what a route like this requires. And then to think that for Swedes, their national airline, SAS, is launching flights to a city that Swedes are obsessed with. I didn't see even a Facebook ad while I was in Sweden for the route. Forget about anything in the city. So I think there's lacking commitment, but if you can, drive resources, which obviously SAS doesn't have, especially to the same extent as Qatar Airways, then hopefully these types of routes could work because it has such a huge positive economic impact on the communities that they serve as well.
100%. And you just really eloquently kind of gave insight into how difficult it is, how much is required to let people know. And you have to have, we've spoken about this before, you have to have cut through. And I can remember one major Gulf carrier that they're not actually operating the route now, as you said, because of COVID, and ever since COVID, sorry. And it's not Qatar Airways, but one of the Gulf carriers was flying to a smaller European city, and in that European city, it continued to be used as a case study, as we had walked into a restaurant and the elderly women at the table next to us were talking about how they could, in that language, about how they could now travel direct to XYZ. So, and that was an example of cut through. They had been able to cut through.
Yeah. Wait, so, what was the route? I'm so curious.
The reason I didn't say it is because there are very, very credible rumors that it's coming back in the next few weeks. There's going to be an announcement. So I don't want to preempt the announcement because I would like to discuss the announcement if and when it comes, and we can link back to this episode. But it's a decent route. So let's have a look. You specifically will like it. So
okay.
It's not Gothenburg.
I know.
There's the clarity from now. Okay, speaking about what is happening in our world, the world of aviation, the world that we now get to share with you on the podcast, this week is pretty big because finally, after several years, the brand new Abu Dhabi midfield terminal, essentially Abu Dhabi's new airport, is set to open this week, some 6 years later than planned.
Amazing. It's about time. So many people just thought it would never open, which if you fly through Abu Dhabi, you see this incredible, elegant terminal through the window while you're sat in like some dilapidated, cramped old building that is the current, or well, the former now Abu Dhabi terminal, just thinking, when are they going to open that? So now no one can believe that it's finally happening. It's so exciting for anyone who has suffered through Abu Dhabi's current airport.
It's funny because I think I remember telling you this, that it was 2015 and I was in transit from Sydney to Abu Dhabi and then on to London. And while I was in Abu Dhabi, I had a lady from the ground services of Etihad Airways. They called themselves back then, I don't know if they are now, concierge. And basically back then they would escort business class passengers on certain fares. So I don't think it was for all business class passengers, but basically maybe if you were full fare business, they would escort you between your flights to and from the lounge and so on. And so this is what she was doing. She had picked me up from the lounge and said, I'll take you to the aircraft. And I saw other passengers on my flight also have this, but about 3 or 4. Anyway, so it was 2015. It was dark. She pointed outside the window. There were all these lights and cranes and everything. And she said, you see that amazing terminal there? And I was, yeah. And she was like, next time you fly through here, she said, you're going to be flying through there because that is opening in just over 15 months. Well, of course, that was, to keep theme and consistency with last week's episode, that was nearly 10 years ago. Okay? It was, it was just under 10 years ago. But okay, listen,
the funny
it wasn't
thing,
a long time ago.
Yeah, the funny thing is
she's nearly 10 years ago.
Okay, yeah, I guess in this case, well, depends how you look at it, but she was right about the first part because I don't think you have traveled through Abu Dhabi since then. So the next time you might really be in the new terminal.
No, I did. I traveled once more through Abu Dhabi since then.
That
yeah.
sucks.
Then after that, it was Dubai for a few times.
Well, you won't be traveling through Abu Dhabi International Airport anymore because it's being renamed Zayed International Airport after Sheikh Zayed, the founder of the UAE. So that's another part of the news, that it's getting a new name, just like Hamad International Airport in Doha. It will be named after local rulers. What do you think about naming airports after figures like, New York JFK, John F. Kennedy Airport? There's so many examples.
Yeah, I think it's so much more common than we realize. I mean, Trudeau in Montreal, Charles de Gaulle in Paris, Liverpool, John Lennon. It's absolutely everywhere in aviation. Specifically in the Middle East, it's incredibly culturally common. As you said, you have Hamad International Airport in Doha, which is named after the father emir, so the father of the emir, Sheikh Hamad. And then you can almost expect that future bits of infrastructure will eventually start to be named after the current emir, and that's what the model they're following in, and they do across the Gulf in the UAE and so on. And I know you're super familiar with this also. I mean, the fact that Abu Dhabi's midfield terminal, and as far as I know, they are still calling it midfield, right?
No. It's been renamed for some inexplicable reason Terminal A, even though the current terminals that exist are Terminal 1 and 3, and then the new one is Terminal A. It's gonna be a weird transition period because, so first of all, Etihad is not moving over for a few weeks. Obviously, it's a huge deal and logistical challenge for them to move. Now as we talk, only the more, I don't want to say, B-list airlines, but the slightly more sketch airlines, maybe the ones that don't give lounge access.
The slums of the airline world.
Basically, some of the airlines that you maybe wouldn't want to fly are moving over. Then after that, I think Etihad's transition starts, and finally on November 14th, every single airline will move. So there are some questions about what does this mean for lounges, because this terminal has finished, ready to go since pretty much 2017 or at least 2019. So things have just been gathering dust. Of course, it's been dusted, but there's a lot of things that need to get rolling. And a big thing in Abu Dhabi, which I wish it would be more common, they have US immigration in Abu Dhabi at the current terminal that you can clear. So you arrive in the US as a domestic passenger. It's incredible, so convenient. But that is currently not being moved over. We don't have a timeline. So US flights will continue to leave from the old terminal even after November 14th, while all other flights will be leaving from a completely different part of the airport, Terminal A.
What could possibly go wrong? But of course, these things do. This is not an Abu Dhabi specific problem. This happens everywhere when to try to move terminals, let alone move basically airport presence, is logistically so complex that this is where passengers, if you are traveling via to or from Abu Dhabi airport over the next couple of months, allow much more time. This isn't to do with queues, and this is just to allow yourself or your taxi driver, for example, your hotel car, your metro stop, to make a mistake, because as you just correctly said, there's going to be this in-between phase where the US flights will go from one place. You could arrive on with one airline, for example, with Etihad, but your next flight can be operated by Etihad's partner who hasn't yet moved over to the new terminal, and so you have to go to the old terminal, and so on and so on. Airports are incredibly complex in this way. I mean, this terminal now is a massive 742,000 square meter terminal, which originally, Dan, this was poised to support the growth of Etihad Airways. Etihad was part of the
good old
ME3,
days.
the Middle East 3, the good old days of Nicole Kidman in The Residence and
iconic.
splashing the cash on these amazing ad campaigns and cabins and the A380s and so on. But of course, since then, a lot has changed. I mean, Etihad Airways had multiple billion-dollar losses prior to the pandemic. And so it was forced to shrink and abandon its plans to try to be another Emirates and kind of go a bit more boutique. And funding was it wasn't flowing as well as they had thought it would once the delays had started into the terminal, which caused some delays related to construction contracts and all these kind of complications. And then there was a long period where Abu Dhabi was completely silent about this terminal. I mean, I remember I was constantly trying to follow up as to what was happening with it, and there was a silent period. Interestingly enough, I've scrolled back on Twitter. My first tweet of the year was on the 4th of January, and I put exclusive. Abu Dhabi's airport, terminal midfield,
Oh my God.
is set to open it will finally
You
open in
said
2023. I put Abu Dhabi's midfield terminal was supposed to open in 2017, but was hit with delays and financial difficulties. Sources have confirmed to me that it is now likely to open before the end of this year. And here we are.
Wow, good job.
That's cool. I didn't notice that while you were talking. I was thinking, did I not run with this as an exclusive, as an exclusive at the beginning of the year?
Yeah,
That's good. That's good. Yeah,
no,
good sources. Good
it's
to-
super
good to know.
exciting. It's just crazy that this was supposed to happen in 2017, which I still feel like that was a very exciting time for aviation. We saw a huge innovation from Lufthansa that year when they introduced Allegris, which famously or infamously gave them a Skytrax 5-star rating, which, we've discussed, questionable. But now Abu Dhabi's new terminal is opening. Where is Lufthansa Allegris, I ask?
Yeah. You know what's funny? Lufthansa, of course, being home in Germany being the home, at least by stereotype, of efficiency, the worldwide famous German efficiency. Berlin Brandenburg Airport, here we go, trivia time. How many years late did the new Berlin airport open?
So I'm going to go back because I remember so clearly in 2012. So I can't say if that's when if it was delayed before then. I remember flying Air Berlin in 2012 from Gothenburg to New York, and there were banners everywhere saying in 2 months, in June, we are opening the new airport. We're so excited. And it was that close. It was less than 2 months away. The staff were talking about it. And then, of course, come June, there's problems with the fire systems or fire alarm systems. And when did it finally open? 2021?
It opened. Okay, so I'll go back to the question. How many years late did it open? Let me give you a hint. I've already mentioned the number
almost 10
times. No,
almost
it was
10
10.
years.
It was 10.
Finally, it actually was
years.
10 years.
Yep. Berlin Airport, the Brandenburg Airport, which is now the Berlin Airport, opened 10 years late and 3 times over budget. One of the national embarrassment projects of Germany, home to such great levels of efficiency, but seemingly struggled to open an airport. And don't be confused. It's not that it took 10 years to do. It was 10 years late in its opening. The opening was originally scheduled 30th of October 2011.
Okay, so
it didn't open until 10 years later.
Wow. Okay, so it actually was delayed even when they were saying it's going to open in June 2012. That was already a few months delayed. So when did it finally open? Oh, it opened in 2020. So I was close in 2021.
So it says and the
It
first
was
aircraft
almost
was the
10
Land-
years, Alex. It was actually
almost 10
9
years. There you go.
years.
Oh my God. The headline I'm looking at says 10, but yeah, you're right. It's almost 10. So actually, it was more in line with my statement,
Yeah,
almost 10.
or my original
The
statement, but
first arrival was an A320 Neo EasyJet. I can remember thinking, of course, Berlin opened in the heart of the worst crisis of
yeah.
global aviation ever. Like October 2020, when literally nothing was happening, Berlin were like, we ready, we
Yeah.
ready.
But I mean, if you're open a new terminal and you're gonna go through the transition, that's a pretty great time to start because traffic was
Yeah,
so
definitely.
slow. So now Etihad facing entirely full flights, having to do the transition, it's much harder. But back to Lufthansa. So the thing I just find so hilarious about we're now 6 years after this seat was supposed to be introduced. So I'm reading this story on 1 Mile at a Time where basically there have been reports that Lufthansa has been trying to figure out what to do with its flagship 747-8, which it plans on keeping around for a long time. It's going to introduce Allegris on these planes. So now all of a sudden we hear Lufthansa doesn't actually know how it's going to fit its Allegris seats on the
Oh
747.
my God.
It hasn't thought it through. So the current plan is to install only business class on the lower deck for the first 2 years. Don't ask me when those 2 years start, probably 2040 or something. Then, given that these seats are heavier than current seats, Lufthansa has to add a 700 kilo weight in the tail of the aircraft to mitigate the heavier seats, which is obviously terrible for fuel burn, let
What a
alone.
mess.
Yeah, so then they finally plan on introducing the seats on the upper deck after 2 years. And then after that, they're going to introduce a new first class on the 747, which they haven't even designed because they can't use the first class they announced, given that first class is in the nose. It's a horrible mess. Does this surprise you at all? I mean, I'm surprised, but does it surprise you?
No, because this whole thing about them being able to announce whatever they want with no timelines, no level of consistency, and I mean, just to be in the headquarters of Lufthansa, knowing you're making a decision in which you are act voluntarily through decisions of your own, adding weight to your aircraft, the same airline that literally, as with the rest of the industry, removes your in-flight magazines and doesn't give you
Yeah,
this anymore and doesn't give
all
you
the
that
good
anymore,
stuff.
because every little bit counts in terms of reducing that weight. And let's be clear, airlines are reducing the weight of your cabins and the weight of the overall flight itself when it begins to operate, not necessarily in the name of climate, although they like to greenwash in that it's just down to the economics of the airline. They can ultimately refuel the aircraft with less fuel, and then they are saving money. And fuel is the largest single operational overhead for any airline. I see so many airlines that try to brainwash passengers about how we're removing this for the planet. And it's like, actually, you're doing it
For
for
costs.
your financials, yeah, which is fine. And there are so many other things that they do for the planet, but let us not greenwash everything.
Exactly. I have to read this incredible comment on this post because this is the last I'm going to say about the Allegris. But he says, assume you wanted to intentionally sabotage an airline and damage both the business and the national brand. You would likely operate all kind of useless, brandless subsidiaries, which brings us to another piece of Lufthansa related news.
Yes, so we have a new Lufthansa brand, exactly what we were all wanting and hoping for. Another new airline brand of the Lufthansa Group. Christmas has come early, folks, because the new Lufthansa City Airlines will operate alongside the existing Lufthansa City line, which currently operates alongside Lufthansa, which of course operates alongside all of the other Lufthansa groups. So now you have the Lufthansa Group Airlines, you have Lufthansa, Lufthansa Cityline, and very soon coming to a destination near you, Lufthansa City Airlines, because what the world needed was another Lufthansa brand, because
Which
the
is
brand is
separate.
just so iconic and so beautiful and everything that we need in life, that they just give us more, and that's exactly what they've done.
Yeah.
Our prayers have been answered. We should just finish the podcast here.
Thank you, Karsten Spohr. This is separate, we should say, to Lufthansa City Line. City Line. This is Lufthansa what? Just City?
This is Lufthansa City Airlines, not to be confused with Lufthansa City Lines. So, of course, there's an air there. And, of course, if you're a passenger and you're confused, you must be crazy because Lufthansa have it all figured out.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that they had Eurowings Discover, which they have just rebranded to Discover Airlines. Not to mention Eurowings. What is going on? Plus, all the other Lufthansa Group airlines. Why are they doing this, Alex?
Contracts. Basically,
Yeah.
it's just an easier way for them to be able to either pay their staff less or to be able to avoid strike action. And this is the Lufthansa Group constantly responding to pressures that they have across the company. And the easiest way that they seem to perceive they can get out of either increasing pay or ensuring that staff working conditions in terms of the packages and the contracts they are offered are better or that they progress. Bam, introduce a whole other airline brand, and somehow through the rigorous process to implement this, they are able to keep away the prospect of strike action, although it does still happen, and there's definitely strike action coming up. They're able to keep it away, and this is just a contractual thing. And Lufthansa, of course, are not the only ones to do this, but come on, I mean, another new airline brand from the Lufthansa Group with the word Lufthansa in it, with the word city in it, so that two have it. So one German aviation journalist, Andreas, he tweeted me saying, but the Lufthansa City line is not its own brand. So I replied to him with a picture of an aircraft that clearly says Lufthansa City Line. Okay, as you're boarding, it's plastered across the aircraft. And he said, but that's just a sticker, Alex. Okay, but what is branding? I mean, a sticker's not branding when they're directly referring to the operator of that flight.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Lufthansa tries to have good relations with its staff, they make contracts that, are supposed to mitigate strikes. And then, of course, the contracts don't say you're not allowed to start a whole new airline paying staff less and basically phasing out the old staff. So then they go and do that instead. They say, sure, we'll pay the old guys, a great rate, but we'll just start a new airline, outsource all our routes to them and pay them much, much less.
And just in case there was any confusion, I'm reading now the official announcement from Lufthansa. They say, without a shred of irony or anything, City Airlines will operate alongside City Line. That's it. That's all it says. So it's like, get it? Got it? Good. Great. Move on.
No one's got it. There's never been a more appropriate time for that meme. No one. And then a new row, Lufthansa. I think just what we need is another Lufthansa subsidiary.
Oh dear. So there we go. Lufthansa continuing to make its headlines for what is another airline brand. The funny part is, of course, is that this week has been Halloween. I mean, the whole week has not been Halloween. October 31st has been Halloween. And Eurowings, and I tweeted this, Eurowings tweeted this AI-generated image where it looks like that they are, a Eurowings A320neo is putting on a costume of a Ryanair livery, basically saying that they're going as Ryanair for Halloween. And they tweeted saying, Eurowings put, we really did have other ideas for this year, but in the end, this one is still our best shot. # sorry, not sorry.
The funny thing about this, I don't know if this is your first time seeing that photo, but I'm pretty sure they've reposted that exact same photo like 5 years in a row. So even the marketing budget is like non-existent because they just keep recycling it. And I'm like, listen, I would much rather pay 10 euros to fly Ryanair than 200 to fly Eurowings, another low-cost airline on the same route. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us at your TED Talk. We appreciate it.
So
that mic, and let's move on.
Let's move on to an airline we both like, even though they're having a lot of issues in the public eye right now.
They are, yes. So Australia's national carrier Qantas, of course, currently drowning in endless scandal ever since a few months ago for so many different reasons. But the scandal is now quite politically motivated in terms of what key figures in Australian government were having access to the chairman's lounge, the most elite lounge that Qantas can offer. Perhaps they didn't actually qualify with air miles to be in that lounge, but it was handed out by Alan Joyce, the now former CEO of Qantas. But the news and the development of this week is that Qantas has now fully confirmed the launch of its non-stop Paris to Australia flights in Nonstop Dan fashion. This is why your username is just going to be worth more and more each year, because everyone's going nonstop. And here we go. So we have nonstop Paris to Australia, specifically to Perth, beginning July 2024.
Just in time for the Olympics, and hopefully in time for the bed bugs to be gone.
Yeah, so they will have cleared the bed bugs. The Olympics will be ready, set, go. And it's just another example of, here we have the rise of ultra long haul. This was always the plan. And of course, you can already fly from London to Perth non-stop. This is a flight that operates daily, and it's a little under 18 hours. I always think, I don't know about you, Dan, but I always think and I always ask this to people that I meet, when they end up asking me about, Alex, what's the longest flight you've been on? Or what do you think of, stopping or going direct? And I always ask them, because I genuinely believe it is 50-50, okay? And I invite the listeners to get in touch with us on this. But I think there are just as many people that want to go ultra long haul nonstop as those who want to stop. What about you?
I think it depends on the cabin class. If I was in economy, no way I would fly nonstop for 17 or 18 hours. Much better. I wouldn't even fly from Australia to the Middle East. Like 13 hours in economy, no thank you. Best to go, ideal world, and obviously time is a luxury. I luckily have a lot of time usually. So in that scenario, I would go Australia to Southeast Asia to the Middle East to Europe, for example, to break it up. In a premium cabin, it depends. I think, flying nonstop definitely has its benefits. But for me, ultimately, it's about the price and the quality of the airline more than anything. I just think like seeing these types of flights, this is something we've never spoken about. Long-term vision for where to live. Like, I don't know about your long-term vision. I'd love to hear it. But for me and Oscar, we've thought about, we love Australia and New Zealand. Problem is, it's very far from our families. So nonstop flights make the biggest difference. But then again, it's like economy class is $2,000 on Qantas flights from London to Perth. So it's not really a steal when they could take one connection and pay half the price. But
and of course, you've got the benefit. People still say, it just being able to, quote, stretch their legs is something that they think is worth stopping for. It just gives you that welcome break. I can remember doing the first Dubai to Melbourne A380 flight. It wasn't the first one, but it was about a week into service with my sister. We were 14 at the time, and we did Dubai to Melbourne non-stop economy, about 14 hours or so, I think a little bit more. Great thing about the A380 is that there's so much space, so you don't feel it as much as other aircraft, because of the way in which the cabin walls are designed. They're more straight. You can't sense the curvature of the aircraft. You don't feel like you're in an aluminium tube. So it was okay, but also, we were smaller. I was smaller in terms of height and everything, and that definitely makes all the difference. Now, if I had to do that journey, I would want to stop if it was going to be an economy, as you said.
Yeah, but I think just the thought that, let's say we did end up moving to Australia, the thought that there are direct flights to Europe in an emergency, you can get there as fast as possible. I think that's just really comforting, and it's good to know that the fastest possible route has been unlocked, which is very valuable. But yeah, we'll see where we end up living. It's a tough equation to figure out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, when you have those conversations about which cities do you find the most livable, and therefore you think that actually you could very, very easily live there. I mean, I'm Greek. I like the sun and warm climates.
Yeah, because I don't like the sun at all.
I don't know. Look, listen, don't take out your anger about Gothenburg and Newark being axed on me, okay? Save that for the therapist after this recording. But there are there are a handful of places that I've traveled to where I thought, okay, I could definitely live here for a long time. Of course, I did mention it on a previous podcast. I feel I could live in California.
On previous podcast, on every previous podcast.
Okay, well, you asked me and I've answered. Now you're becoming salty with my reply. We'll
be neighbors in Beverly Hills.
For me, to be honest. Excuse me, you do not live in Beverly Hills, okay?
I could move there
Like,
tomorrow if I wanted to. I'll remind you.
oh, this is the issue with American passport holders. Here we go. He's ramming it around like like he's a golden ticket lottery winner. We get it. It's fine. You could. But also, there are ways in which I could, and also the listeners could.
Tell me
So
how.
if you're not careful, we'll all move in on the same street, okay? I'll get together a group of listeners who are
The
also up
on-air
living
street.
in LA. The honor, exactly, and we'll be right there. Anyway, there are cities that I think I could not. I'm not going to say specifically LA, but California I could, and then anywhere that's just warmer with as much natural daylight as possible.
Yeah.
The thing I hate about a lot of Europe is how dark it can be in the winter, and then how that just affects the whole environment and everybody's mood and everyone that you interact with. And
It's just depressing.
you know,
I
it
can't
can
do
be
it.
depressing. And you start to see the rhetoric of that now as the clocks have moved back in Europe, haven't they, over the last weekend?
Yeah.
And so now there's this, oh, the evenings are darker and everyone needs to get in earlier. And, it's like, and then the media start the conversation about, worrying people about, the energy bills and there's just a lot of that darkness comes with a lot of worry that I think affects population, that those same, for example, economic uncertainties can exist in the summer months. But because things are brighter, not only do people feel better, but also you have the whole rhetoric of society and media deciding we're not going to worry about bothering you about your electricity bill, even though you're still using electricity in summer. So there's this control, and I think there's just, you have to be outside of that bubble to be able to see that that's what happens in so much of Europe. I mean, so
What
not
about
many places
Australia?
that
I know Melbourne doesn't have great weather, but like Sydney is so beautiful and has better weather. And
Well, a lot of my family are in Melbourne. And,
Yeah.
and I love Melbourne. I love Melbourne a lot. I think it's such a cool city. I think Melbourne is tagged as the world's most livable city. That's kind of that tagline. And it's just so cool, effortlessly. And you're right, they don't benefit from the same climate that Sydney does, just an hour away by plane. But it is, on the whole, benefiting compared with the places like Europe of beautiful Australian weather. Of course, not to the extent of the Gold Coast and places like that. I just think that to live in Australia, I would just feel too far from everywhere.
yeah, that's the
There's
problem.
just this work-wise, time zone-wise. I mean, the only thing that could, if I could move to California tomorrow, and then it was just my decision to make. If I had to weigh up the pros and cons, on the con side of it, it would be the time zone.
Yes,
Because
it's the worst.
it's just, I mean, for example, last month when I was there, I'm waking up, everyone and their dog has completed the day, right?
Yeah.
So like I had emails in my inbox that were, hi Alex, would like you to do blah, 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 followed by a follow-up email 6 hours later that was, never mind, given that you
You're
didn't
just
respond. We
sleeping.
can't. And I'm like, oh my God, all I did was sleep, and I only slept 7 hours at that. The time zone is so far. But then I also remember while I was in LA after 4 days, I was like, you know what? Forget the time zone. This is the best
This
place
is
to
the
live.
center of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, where I am is all that matters.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of
But
true.
realistically, from a business point of view, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I have to say about New Zealand, Oscar and I, when we went there, instantly we were like, we're home. We've never been here before, but we're home. And we spent 10 days there, and just, I've been back on transit. I really connect to it. I would move there in a heartbeat if it was like, let's say where the Canary Islands are, instead of all the way on the other side of the world. But there's a few
I
things.
think if New Zealand was where the Canary Islands were, it wouldn't be.
This is
very much
hypothetical.
New Zealand.
It's a hypothetical example. But something that just blew my mind is that New Zealand to San Francisco or LA is a 3-hour time difference. I'm like, how is this possible? And to me, thinking, okay, it's 6 hours to New York, even if it's 12 hours to Europe, makes it a little better. Not to mention, it's the first really relevant time zone. So instead of being behind, you're really ahead. So, deadline is the 1st of November. Well, I'm done before you even wake up on the 1st of November because it's the evening.
And I do like that. I like traveling to the Far East for that. I just like, in general, I enjoy making sure. I mean, the question there would be ahead of what? So I guess somewhere in us, as Europeans, embedded deep inside our stomachs, we have GMT just right there, or CET to go to your time zone. Because what are we saying ahead of what?
Yeah, I mean, ahead of, I guess, the places that you and I do the most business with, right?
Yeah. And that's why, for example, the Middle East, I've always said this benefits from amazing time zone because of the way in which so close to Asia, head start to the European working day, not too far away. The only thing that it's too far away from is LA, but of course nobody's working in LA. They're too busy. They're all on the beach and everyone's surfing and having avocado toast and whatever.
The funny thing is we were
not really missing anything there.
Yeah, I mean, we were both just impacted by the time zone issues because we were supposed to do a joint interview with people on the West Coast of the US and everything messes up due to time zone confusion.
Are they on the West Coast?
I think they're between coasts toward the West. It even confuses me. And at this point, I just think wherever I am in the world, I keep track of New York time, UK time, European time, and then the rest, I'll just let someone else figure it out.
What about the time zones that are like X hours in front or behind and a half?
Oh, don't get me started. India, don't get me started on that. And there's some that actually have 15 minutes. I could not. Yeah, you would need like a computer program where you enter what is the time here and then what's the time on the other side of the earth so I can plan meetings at the right time.
Yeah, so like I think most people don't realize. I mean, India and Sri Lanka, 5 hours 30 ahead of UTC. So that 5 hours and a half. Afghanistan, 4.5. Iran, 3.5.
No, but
part of Canada,
15-minute time zones. 15-minute time zone, Nepal. That's where it is.
Yeah, that's messy.
Yeah, that's even messier than half an hour.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing Kathmandu, Nepal's capital, is located 5 hours and 45 minutes of solar time east of UTC.
It's just like, why? Why not just make it 6?
I always realize this when I look at like when you said that we both kind of wake up and end up scrolling flight radar and have a look at what's around, and I look at these aircraft and the departure times just to see on-time performance, when did they leave, how long have those passengers been in the air while I was asleep, and so on. And it's, as you say, recognizing that the time that they left, local time compared to UTC, what? And then obviously it's somewhere like Nepal or Sri Lanka.
Super confusing. Alex, we have done it again. We've just chatted and chatted. We need to get into Q&A. Let's go.
Let's go to our questions. Okay, so the first question I have here is from the username @LWire. This came on YouTube. So remember, the podcast is available on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, but also you're able to listen on YouTube as LWire has. And he says, my favorite podcast so far. This is a question for Dan to use. So this is specifically for you. Have you ever given... Yeah, there we go. Have you ever given speeches to the aviation industry? And if so, what was the topic?
Well, I haven't really been an aviation speaker. Until next year, I will be at the Travel Summit, Toronto 2024. If anyone wants to come there, hear me speak, meet up. But Alex, I'm sure you have done a bit more of that.
I have done a lot of that, yeah. I mean, aside from the broadcast stuff, to be specific about the question, I have spoken to not just to airlines, but also to manufacturers. One nice example is I spoke to a big room of about 150 Airbus cabin design personnel about what was happening elsewhere in the industry in terms of the developments and the trends related to cabin. And it was just kind of a nice update and very casual, but they enjoyed it. And I remember I also got roasted because the airline didn't deliver my bag, and I had to, and this was in Hamburg, and I had to appear on stage. I was in a full suit, but I did not have black long socks. I only had black trainer socks. So not a big deal, right? But you could see as I walked onto the stage that I was wearing black trainer socks, and it was in Hamburg, and they were judgmental Germans.
Oh God.
The first row, immediately she said to the guy next to her, maybe this is the style with the socks. Maybe this is the style. And I opened by saying, please ignore the fact I'm wearing trainer socks. It is because the airline didn't deliver my bag, and that's why. But we had a great session, and it was cool.
It's the content that's important. Why judge your outfit? I feel like I'm indirectly presenting to airlines through my videos. I know that I've heard
You are.
Yeah, I've heard from several cabin crew at different airlines that they've used parts of my videos for training, actually cabin crew training. So that, in that sense, I've spoken in cabin crew training and stuff like that when it comes to crew, just not directly, which I guess is, I should be getting paid for that.
They're like, look at how Daniel put that knife and fork back down onto the table. That's what we're aspiring for.
No, they're like, that's sloppy. No. I mean, I often talk about like what I find good in service. So I think that's why people like it.
Okay, your turn.
So I have a very interesting question, which is something I think about when I eventually have kids. Kelly writes, she has a 3-year-old daughter. She is terrified to fly with her in business class because she's worried she'll disturb other passengers. So,
oh, that's good.
What is your perspective and thought on that? Potentially thinking that you might be a parent in the future as well.
Right. I think there are two sides you have to look at this. There is a clear difference between kids that are naughty and the parents are not doing anything, okay?
Yeah.
And kids and kids that are in distress, the air pressure is affecting their ears and so on and so on, babies crying and so on. Clear difference. So that's why I think you can't take this kind of sweeping statements with, oh my God, we dread the fact if there are kids in, for example, to relate to the question, in premium cabins, because typically people would say that they're paying to have a better night's sleep there, and how can they if there's the sound of a crying baby? I'm always sympathetic with something like a crying baby because of the way in which we know the science tells us that, as adults, our ears can be affected, not least newborns, toddlers, and so on and so on. My sympathy ends dramatically the moment I see kids that their parents are just too afraid to discipline them, to tell them the word no. Okay? No, it is not acceptable to have the kids running up and down the aisle in any cabin. Okay? When yes, oh, but little Tommy wants to run around. Okay, but this is an aircraft, and the aisles need to be kept clear for certain reasons. And also, it's not for the other passengers to ultimately have to go along with the fact that you have kids. The parents that don't stop going on that they have kids, that somehow is a justification.
Yeah.
We were all kids once, of course. It's nothing unique. I have much more respect for parents that say, no, you're not going to be running around and prodding and poking other passengers. And I'm going to do my best as a parent to keep you entertained, to keep you happy, to have you here next to me on the seat, not 10 rows away while daddy is sleeping and the kid is busy prodding 32C.
Yeah.
That's where my thing is.
I absolutely think that kids should be allowed, at least in business class. I'm not sure about first under a certain age, but one thing that more airlines should do is create, like, many airlines have 2 cabins, one at the front, a smaller one in the back. Why not make it so that one cabin is dedicated for families with kids and one is, guaranteed silence, or at least closer to guaranteed? I think that's a good idea. But I agree with you. You need to see, are the parents doing all they can? If they are, people will see that and they'll understand it. It reminds me of a story I saw, I think many years ago now. A same-sex couple was taking home their adopted daughter. Like, I think she was 3 months old, very, very young. to their new home. First time flying, obviously. So they were super nervous. They were flying first class in the US. So not quite a long haul business class flight where people are looking to sleep. But I remember they had made little notes with a picture of the girl that said, "Hi, my name is whatever. My name is Anna.
I remember
I've just been
this. I remember
adopted.
this.
It's my first flight. Please be understanding with me if I'm upset." I thought that was wonderful. I would love, I wouldn't mind doing that if when I have kids, just it's a cute gesture. Other people appreciate it. It humanizes the family and the baby, and
Yeah.
it gives a bit of context as well. So the people aren't just like, because it also shows you made the effort to make a note like that. So obviously you're going to make an effort to take care of your child on the flight as well.
Yeah, the moment that I see that the parents are immediately, like, the kid is acting up and then the parent comes in and says no, like, that's not, then I'm like, okay, good, everything's fine. Because
Yeah.
even if it then continues not to be fine, the parent is showing that they are not scared or not simply giving up because, well, I have kids, so you will have to suffer with it because I'm not going to be disciplinary about it. There was a debate on Good Morning Britain about this very subject just when summer was starting and all the travel stories pop up, and the woman defending this position, she was a young woman, she was literally saying, well, kids are part of life, and so if you don't want to go on a plane with kids, then get yourself a private jet. That was the stuff. But that's not the debate. The debate is that it cannot be just like in a restaurant, just like elsewhere, the case that a kid cannot just be told no. They're like, why should we all have to, let there be the expectation that yes, the kid is going to stay in their assigned seat. And if not, then the parent is going to do whatever they can, but not involve everyone else with that.
Yeah. Yep. Well said.
Okay, my next question is from Peter. He says, when you are traveling with hand luggage only, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to struggle with liquids and end up paying a fortune for the smaller liquids to comply with the 100 ml limits that still exist almost everywhere. What do you guys do when you're traveling with hand luggage in order to get around these rules?
Well, I'm the worst person to ask because I hate traveling with only hand luggage, and I very rarely do unless it's like a 2-day trip. Precisely for this reason. This is one of the big reasons. So
I travel light if the trip is a couple of days.
exactly,
as
and
you
then
just
it's
said.
fine
If
to
I'm
bring
taking a weekend
tiny
trip,
toiletries.
Yeah, and what I'll try to do, Peter, in order to get around that, is to not buy the stuff at the airport and to try to find the smaller, below 100 ml toiletries in the supermarket prior to travel, and then put them in the clear bag before and have it all ready to go that way, rather than end up having to fork out at the airport where everything is going to be more expensive.
But you're from the UK. That's the country of cheap miniature toiletries. Like Boots is always 4 for the price of 3. You can get all types of things, face wash, shampoo, deodorant, and it's like £2 each. So you end up paying £6 or £7. So what I do is whenever I'm transiting in the UK, I just stock up on all my minis because it has most of the stuff I need. And then I just don't bother looking for it elsewhere.
You know what I love? I love that feeling after I've got through security. I'm like, oh, now all those toiletries can go in my hand luggage suitcase rather than I take them out of my duffel bag. I'm like, you don't need to be checked again. You're fine. You're going to go in there. And the same with like the chargers and things like that. I love that feeling. But hopefully we are going in a direction where now more and more airports will be having this technology that doesn't require you to take out any liquids or electronic devices. This is already, for example, in the UK, since we're talking about it at London City Airport. And also
Removing the limit.
are... Yeah, the limits have basically removed. I mean, there is still a limit, but it's nowhere near 100 mils.
Yeah.
So you're
Sorry, I need to bring my 2-liter sunscreen with me. That's a less likely scenario, but yeah, that's
For
one
me,
of
it's
my
hairspray. It's always hairspray that I end up having to.
Yeah. My main reasons that I do like transiting in the UK, although I avoid Heathrow occasionally, I like to go just to stock up at Boots and eat at Marks and Spencer's or Pret. Because they have, Pret in the UK is the best. So
I love Pret. I love Pret.
It's those.
I love Pret. Okay. This question is from Lucy. It's a reply to my story. I don't know how this is relevant. Maybe she saw someone in my story walk past, but all she put was, "Who are the monsters that wear jeans on a long haul?" That's it.
Good question.
That's
I
the
have the
question.
same question. Or who wears
Yeah.
suits on a long haul. I'm like, you know, you're not working
Yeah,
right now,
no.
right?
Even if you like, sometimes I see a passenger boarding in a suit from a long haul. I think, okay, well, you're going to get changed on board, right? I mean, you're not going to sit there like that in a suit for the next X amount of hours. But to answer the question specifically, who are the monsters that wear jeans on a long haul? I don't know, Lucy. They're just monsters.
Yeah,
I have no
that's
other answer. I don't know how they do it. What are they doing?
okay. Maybe this should be a good last topic. What are your thoughts on what you should wear on a long haul? Obviously, not, open shoes or a bathing suit, but in terms of
Yeah.
should you dress up? What should you wear? Or is it okay to wear sweatpants? What do you think?
I wear loose fitting clothing when flying long haul. Trainers, definitely. And then loose fitting slash baggy soft pants. So whether or not they are tracksuit pants, but no, more kind of like tracksuit-esque,
Athleisure.
formal tracksuit.
Athleisure is the word.
Yeah, athleisure. That's what I'm wearing.
We'd
I'm wearing
like to
athleisure.
introduce you guys to athleisure.
You're introducing me as well because there's the exact pants that I'm using an American term, right? Pants, right? Exact pants that I wear when I travel. Okay, very loose fitting. I've got them in different colors, but I don't know how to describe it because it's neither a tracksuit nor trousers. That it's, as you said, I think it's athleisure. And then I'll wear a t-shirt with a hoodie. And no matter this is for a long haul, no matter where I am, even in a hot climate, or what the season of this, or what time of year, because I just think you can't go wrong. If the aircraft cabin is warm, I take my hoodie off. If the aircraft cabin is cold, great, I've got my hoodie on. So I
Yeah.
just think that's how I'm most comfortable.
I agree. I also don't personally mind wearing shorts. If I'm flying between Thailand and Singapore, both places are boiling. I'm not going to put on long pants and feel super hot and uncomfortable when it's perfectly fine to wear
Long
shorts.
pants actually make you feel warmer, or is
I
just
mean,
visually you think it
no,
does?
most of mine, no, definitely. I feel like I have a pair of, or like a model of short that I have in every different color that I just wear all the time that is amazing. And it's super breathable. It's like water resistant. And I always prefer to wear that over long pants. But if I am wearing something long, I wear similar to you. It's a cargo pant. So it's not similar to you in that sense, but it looks very sort of dressed up. It's athleisure in the sense that it's like extremely spandexy or something. So you can stretch around, you don't feel at all uncomfortable. And I just don't understand.
Athleisure.
You're welcome, Alex, for introducing. It's like a term it was a trend so long ago already, but I don't understand the amount of comments I get on my YouTube videos. Why are you not wearing a shirt in first class? Obviously, I'm wearing a shirt, but why are you not wearing a dress shirt in first class? Or why are you not wearing something fancy in first class? I'm just like, the airline gives you pajamas during boarding that they encourage you to put on. They don't want you in a suit. They want you in literal pajamas. So wear whatever you want. It's not a problem.
Yeah, just please don't go to the bathroom barefoot. I know we spoke about that really
Yeah,
early
and
on
wear
in the,
closed
in this.
closed shoes so no one has to smell anything bad. Also, when some men wear those tank tops that cover like 50% of their torso, and then they're sitting against a leather seat, and you're just like, oh, this is not how it's meant to be.
Welcome on board, United. No, anyway.
Literally united, yeah, with all their leather seats.
Okay, next question. How can you actually make economy class comfortable? What are your tips? In brackets, this comes ahead of a flight I have to New Zealand. There we go. So, New Zealand makes its debut again. And I know that the aircraft is expecting a lighter load. So it's how can you make economy class genuinely comfortable? And basically he's saying that he knows, I don't know how he knows, but he knows that the aircraft is going to have a lighter load.
Who asks
This
this?
is a question from Jordan on Instagram. I think
You know what's funny?
Go for an
I
empty row.
realized, yeah, of course. But for me, it was like a mind blowing realization as an av geek who has always chosen the window seat. On a flight like, I guess last year, I sat in an aisle seat for really the first time in a long time on a good airline. And I was like, wait a minute. the aisle seat is so much nicer than the window seat, in my opinion. So for me, I would get an aisle, maybe pay a bit extra to have the bulkhead row in an aisle, or to sit toward the back where on many wide bodies, there's 2 seats instead of 3 seats on the side. That's, an affordable way for me to feel as free and flexible as possible to move around so you can easily go to the toilet or stretch. Yeah, just feel a bit more human.
Yeah, definitely. There are a few flights that I've done, delivery flights, where we were unable to sit in the business class area of the aircraft because the seat models were still taped up and covered with protective sheeting and so on. So we were all in economy, and there was only about 18 of us on board on these delivery flights. And I would become an expert at making up a bed in economy. So putting back all of the armrests, including the aisle armrest, which does go back if you find the small button underneath the armrest itself towards the back of it. So if you imagine the armrest on the aisle, typically a lot of passengers think that does not recline. That doesn't go back in order for you to access. It does. There's a small button at the back. You press it, and then it's a release handle. You can pull that armrest back. So I would put them all back, including the one in the middle and the one after, and then I would put a blanket as a kind of mattress, maybe even another blanket, a second one on top of it. Then I would put pillows everywhere, all the gaps, all the by where the cabin wall meets the seat and so on. And then another blanket on top and fold it back like a hotel, maybe embroider my initials in the pillow, and then khalas, done. Hey presto. A nice
it is fine, yeah. Especially if you do what you did, it can be fine, but that's not always possible. Yeah. Also, all airlines don't let you, or they don't have raisable armrests in all aisle seats, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is a legal requirement that some rows, at least on all aircraft, have to have those armrests that go back in order for accessibility purposes and for those that require special assistance. So you can have a quick look on the kind of Seat Guru style websites for that. But most airlines that you will fly on, that armrest does go back. And it's always funny because I can't remember if I told you this. It would always make me laugh being on a short haul flight, and I would very smoothly and effortlessly pull back the armrest at the aisle. And then the passenger across the aisle would see me do it and then try to do it and like battle with it up and down, up and down, up and down. And they can't do it. And they're looking like, well, how did he just do it? I'm like, well, you can ask, or you can just continue to give me sketchy looks. If you continue to give me sketchy looks, I'm not telling you.
So European. I don't want to throw shade, but so European to just like look, but not ask how to do it. In the US, it would be like, oh my God, are you magic? Tell me how you did that. Everyone requests your American accent. So I think we need it to reappear at least once every episode.
And like, Jerry, did you see that young boy put his armrest back?
so accurate. Oh my gosh, young man, how did you do that?
Yeah, I love the way that Americans talk to everyone though.
Yeah,
compared with like the modesty of the Europeans. Oh my God, we just made eye contact.
Yeah,
we must now look away.
Yeah, and I mean it's really crazy as an American when traveling, because you can go like a long time without seeing Americans, without really talking to many people. If Oscar and I are traveling alone, let's say, then you just happen to be sitting next to Americans who are like at the table next to you at a restaurant, and somehow you end up in a conversation in any part of the world. I really love it.
I love when I was just there, I sit down and then like the person right next to the table, I make like a half smile to be polite, and it's like, so how's your day going? Like, so we're doing it. We are doing this now.
And then the conversation ends. You're like talking about some crazy, completely unrelated niche stuff. I love it.
Also, I mean, the British accent sounds on steroids in the US. I don't know why. When everyone around you is speaking in full-blown American, the accent that is my everyday accent that I have suddenly I'm like, why do I sound like something from Harry Potter?
Yeah.
I sound like something from.
You're
It
like
literally
Colin,
sounds like I'm.
yeah, Love Actually. You know that guy who goes to the US.
Honestly, I remember I kept calling for, I don't know, extra towels or room service or something, and it literally said, good evening, Buckingham Palace calling. In my head, that's what I was like, tone it down, try and be more,
Yeah,
But,
yeah. And that's how
it's
I
just the
feel.
environment when
That's how I feel in the UK. I'm like, hey, y'all, like, where can I find the nearest public transport?
That's how I feel you are on the podcast. Anyway.
Oh, great.
You
So then I'm
can't hear that, but
consistent.
for me, you are a token Nashville co-anchor
Great.
of On Air.
And you're our spokesperson for His Majesty the Queen on here.
Yeah.
The
So
Wait,
this-
I just said His Majesty the Queen.
And I said, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a time to
wasn't
wrap
listening.
up on that note.
Before we do, speaking of His Majesty, I put this on Twitter. There was a video that the royal family's official Twitter account released saying the King and Queen flew to Kenya today ahead of their state visit, which begins tomorrow. Follow Royal Visit Kenya for the latest updates.
You don't need to
And
do the accent. You already have it. You don't need to try.
I know, but that was like a crown accent. The crown is coming back in a couple of weeks.
I actually listened to the Crown music this morning. It just autoplayed, and I was like, oh, this is good.
Rubbish, it didn't autoplay. You search for that.
I swear it autoplayed. But
Don't
anyway,
give me this.
back to Kenya.
Did the Etihad boarding music also just autoplay?
No, I was playing something else before that. I don't remember what.
Anyway, so the King and Queen, they uploaded it as a video, and what I liked is, and I tweeted this, they look very comfortable sitting in the Thompson Vantage XL premium cabin seat. This is a seat that we have spoken about when we did the cabin design episode.
Yep.
It is the business class seat that you will find on the likes of Qantas, Scandinavian Airlines, Rwandair, and many other carriers. It is also on the state aircraft, the RAF aircraft in the UK that the royal family use for these type of state visits. So that's an A330 Voyager, and they are looking very comfortable
Yeah.
in what is a business class seat that many passengers will have flown before.
Yeah, how humble of them. Slumming it in the Thompson XL Vantage seat. What does RAF stand for?
Royal Air Force.
Yeah, it's so funny because one of my mom's best friends is British. She teaches us all these British expressions, which I should know growing up there. But she's like, so she goes gaff and naff. So gaff is that something's bad, right? Or is gaff my house? It's one of those two, right?
Correct. So my gaff
Yeah.
is my place. So
Yeah.
basically my home.
My gaff
house,
is
my
naff.
my thing. So to say that somebody's gaff is naff. So naff means bad, basically naff. For example, Lufthansa's European business class is quite literally the definition of naff. Okay, but to say somebody's gaff is naff is awfully impolite, Dan.
You would just
suggest
say it
that
about your
someone's house
own
is not nice.
about your own house. Yeah, I was just
You're right,
wondering,
but don't bring me into it.
because then I read it as RAF. So then I'm like, ooh, maybe the seats on the RAF are a bit naff.
There's so many little things that I can't. I always remember when we are saying it, and my mum will say it to some of my friends in the Middle East, and I'll be like, no, they'll look at her for a split second and say, no, they don't say that here.
They have no idea what that
Just a
means.
very, very specific, normal words that would be fully embedded into the English language in England, but not outside. Oh, okay, for example, again, I don't think it's an official word, but, she's just trying to suss out if that's the truth or not.
Yeah, figure out.
Suss, yeah. But
It's
that's
funny now
not-
that sus has got a new meaning, like among Gen
Sus
Z.
now has a
sus
new
means
meaning.
suspicious.
Yeah, it's not. Which this sus I just said does not mean suspicious.
Yeah, I think that's an
somehow
American
linked.
thing. Yeah, I love British slang, especially like I understand most of it, even though I would never use it. But then seeing Oscar hear my mom's friend, for example, talk, every second word is some British slang. Oscar is just one big question mark. Like, huh? It's great.
Like, do you know if I say to you, "Oh, Dan, you look knackered,"
Yeah, I look exhausted, tired.
Okay, and you know that I can say to you, oh, there was a bloke in first class.
Yeah, there was a bloke that was well fit.
Okay, there we go. So what about if I say to you, somebody was plastered?
Is that super drunk?
Yes, very
See,
good.
I have a
Oh
connection
God,
to the UK. So
don't go to that area because it's dodgy.
of course, that I think all Americans know dodgy. I mean, it's even in Love Actually, the dodgy end.
Okay, I'm reading here. Fiver, of course, tenor. Yeah, bird.
Okay, that I have no idea.
That's not nice. I mean, it's not nice now, but okay. But it's also not. It's not offensive. It's just embedded in English slang. So I'll say. So bird is British slang for a girl or a woman. So someone would say, "Oh, there was a bird sitting next to me." They mean a woman.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, that's fully embedded in British slang.
The bird next to me
The,
was a bit naff.
There we go. And so you went back home to your
My gaff,
gaff.
with a bird.
Yeah, exactly.
She was a bit naff, but I
Yeah.
didn't mind. She was fit enough for me.
Yeah, there we go. So somehow we got onto British slang because this is what we do in this podcast. We
mean,
go off onto
Yeah,
tangents.
exactly. But I like that's what's so funny about British Airlines because I feel like the UK is so formal, but both BA and Virgin, you board and they're like, "Hello, guys, welcome on board. How's it going?" Like it's so laid back. Fancy some food? And I like that as long as they're performing their duties. But it's a very cultural experience flying both those airlines.
One, I was with my friend, right? With my friend, and he is from the Middle East, and we were checking in at Heathrow, and she said that the lady checking us in was a lovely, super Cockney accent, and she said the loads about the flight load. She said, no, the loads at this time of day are much quieter. Do you know what I mean? She said like that, and he said to me, he was like, Dramamine.
Isn't that a drug?
It's a drug. Yeah. He was like, what did she say? I said, she said, do you know what I mean? And he was like, why did she ask us this? I'm like,
why would I
it's
know what she
rhetorical. Yeah. It's rhetorical. It's nothing we need to answer.
Yeah. But I mean, every sentence on this podcast, we say, which is another, I think for non-English speakers, saying, I mean, it's these filler phrases.
Don't like sentences that start with so. Sentences should not start with so. So let's go. We're guilty of it.
Yeah.
Grammatically, it's incorrect. I think on TV, I say ultimately too much. Every time, even in the podcast, I think I say, and ultimately we. Okay, that's just a personal thing, but I think I might say it too.
Yeah,
Great.
you just have
Now-
those words
now I've just highlighted it.
There's just those words you resort to that you're comfortable with. At least we don't say it like all the time, which is a
Like
pet
is
peeve for
awful.
me.
Do you know if something is mint condition? Yeah.
It's in perfect condition, but I think that's used in the US as well.
Yeah, some of these are terrible. These are 25 brilliant British English slang phrases, and I'm like, excuse me, that's from New York. That's from Brooklyn.
Oh, the Aussie phrase that cracks me up. The first time I heard it, I was like,
Oh, the
huh?
Aussies are so good.
They have so many good ones, but I was volunteering with a bunch of Aussies in Thailand, and one of them goes, I have brown shit all over my thongs. And I was like,
I knew you were going to say
what did
I
you
knew,
just
wait. Pause before you say what it is, okay? Just imagine 8-year-old Alex, okay? His cousins had flown over from Melbourne, where I said a lot of my family are. He was staying with us in London, and we're getting ready to go out for the day. We're going to Wimbledon. Okay, it was summer. And she goes to me, could you go upstairs and get my thongs? She said to me. I said to her, I was 8, yeah? I said to her, what? She was like, my thongs? Could you just get them? They're just next to the bed. Yeah. So I was like, so I'm like this, okay. So I go upstairs. Into the guest room where she's staying, and I'm looking around. Of course, I'm looking for what I understand to be thongs, wondering why does she want them for Wimbledon, right?
And why does she want you to
Maybe
get
she's gonna throw them. Why does she want me? Like, this is awfully inappropriate of my cousin to ask 8-year-old Alex. Why couldn't she have asked 8-year-old Demi? At least it would have been woman to woman,
Yeah.
right? And I'm thinking maybe she wants to throw them at Nadal or Federer. Like, I don't know what floats her boat. Anyway, so I'm looking. So I come downstairs and I'm like, I couldn't find them. I'm like, I'm sorry. And she was like, they're right there. She's like, there's two of them, right? I couldn't find it. Long story short, I then later learned, to my relief, thongs are what we call flip-flops.
Yeah. So you can imagine when this girl says I have brown shit all over my thongs. I go, what? Yeah.
So appropriate.
Yeah.
They abbreviate everything. They abbreviate everything. They from the word afternoon to the word the family name of the prime minister. There is nothing that Aussies do not abbreviate. So, for example, the prime minister Anthony Albanese, he's Albo. Right? Afternoon, they'll say, yeah, we'll meet tomorrow, Arvo. Of course, avocado toast.
Yeah, avo.
You know, yeah. And the amount of swear words that are in their language.
Oh my God.
It's crazy.
In Sydney in May, Oscar and I were walking on there's a golf course by Bondi Beach. So we were trying to walk somewhere. We just walked across it and there's this group of 30-year-old, very preppy guys. That girl's such a effing C word. And I'm just like, whoa. It's a horrible phrase, but it's very commonly used down under.
When you go to the Australian dictionary, okay, and you see the C word, the C word, that it says used when exchanging pleasantries between close friends or family. If someone calls you the C word in Australia, then breathe a sigh of relief. It means they like you.
It's like a lovable phrase. Is that it? Like, some people in the US will say, I love you, bitch. And that's a loving thing.
Yeah. It's so funny how everything is. Oh, I can't remember what a galah is, which is, a galah, is a bird with a reputation of being an idiot. So if someone is silly or stupid, then they're just a galah about like that bird that's not very bright or has a reputation for not being very bright. It's funny.
Yeah.
Everything is
well,
abbreviated.
I think we've perfectly timed the episode to fill a flight from Frankfurt to London. So if anyone happens to be flying that route, download the episode. Well, obviously you're listening to the end now.
Can't the route be somewhere nicer? Can't the route be somewhere... can't it be
how
from
about Phuket to Singapore? Nice route.
Exactly.
Tokyo to Seoul.
Now we're talking. Even like, I don't know, let's connect two capitals of culture, Rome to Madrid or Lisbon to Paris. But for you to just try and bring up Frankfurt is,
We've slandered Lufthansa enough this episode. Let's leave it at that.
No. They're never going to talk to me again.
I fly Lufthansa a lot. Not that I enjoy it, but being banned from Lufthansa.
I have to fly them a lot in Europe.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not just Lufthansa. You got to be careful. Remember, they're the group. So it's like, imagine you're boarding Swiss. We know what you said about City Line. I'm like, it wasn't about City Line. I swear it was about City Airlines.
When I was young,
here we go.
Lufthansa was my favorite airline. I knew, especially then, all their announcements by heart. Like, meine Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen an Bord
the
dieser Lufthansa-Flug nach New
username.
York. No. And on that note, we will see you guys.
Wait. I was throwing shade saying that hence the username, but you were going full flow. I want to hear it. Go.
Hear what?
Give me Lufthansa. Announcement.
Oh, okay. Well, let's rewind. Meine Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen an Bord dieser Lufthansa-Flug nach New York. And then I forgot. I know some random parts of the safety video, but I forgot most of it. I used to.
It's funny how when you keep hearing it, sometimes the only or the first part of the language that you know is from what you hear on board.
Yeah, literally. And then
Do you speak fluent German? I've forgotten.
No. Absolutely not.
You don't.
But I do understand a lot, since it's quite similar to, if you know Swedish and English, it's easy to understand most of it. But still, I know what most of the Lufthansa stuff means.
The first ever Arabic that I knew years and years and years ago when I was a kid was the whole السلام عليكم معكم أليكس من يونا مرحبا بكم في الخطوط الجوية القطرية إلى دوحة إن شاء الله. Like basically the pilot announcement that they would make at the beginning of the flight.
Yeah, whenever I try to impress someone with my Arabic, I go, because an Emirati friend told me how to say مرحبا بكم على المتن الطيران الاتحاد.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
Shukran.
You just need a little bit of shukran.
Yeah, that's shukran.
That was on the announcement. Well, with that, we will say shukran. We will say
Danke. Merci.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Merci. Grazie mille. We will say obrigado. We will say.
Yeah, kamsahamnida, arigatou gozaimasu.
Goodness, I didn't even say it in Greek. We will say efharisto.
And then we'll say goodbye in American.
Goodbye. Thank you for joining us. And we shall see you next week on air.
See ya. Bye.